She held her feverish infant close, tears in her eyes, as a dismissive nurse denied them care, until 10 minutes later, the CEO's private jet descended to save them. Sarah Miller stumbled through the automatic doors of Mercy General Hospital, her tiny son, Leo, cradled against her chest. His skin burned against hers, a dry, radiating heat that terrified her. Each shallow, rattling breath he took was a fresh stab of panic in her heart. The emergency room buzzed with a low hum of activity, but the triage desk seemed an impossible distance away. She clutched Leo tighter, his small, limp body a dead weight. "Please," she whispered, her voice already cracking. "My baby, he's so sick." The nurse at the desk, a stern-faced woman named Nurse Davis, didn't even look up from her computer screen, her fingers clicking rapidly on the keyboard. "He's burning up, please. Someone just look at him." The harsh fluorescent lights of the waiting room seemed to amplify the sickly sweet smell of antiseptic, making Sarah feel dizzy. Nurse Davis finally lifted her eyes, her gaze cool and appraising, sweeping over Sarah's worn coat and frayed jeans before flicking to the baby. "Name?" she asked, her tone flat, devoid of any warmth or urgency. Sarah's breath hitched. "Sarah Miller. My son Leo. He's only 4 months old. He has a terrible fever, and he won't wake up properly." She fought to keep her voice steady, to convey the terror that was clawing at her throat. The nurse's expression remained unmoved, her pen hovering over a form. "She doesn't care. Oh God, she doesn't care." Other people in the waiting area, some slumped in chairs, others pacing, glanced over, their faces a mixture of curiosity and moron. "We have no pediatric beds available," Nurse Davis stated, her voice crisp and final, like the snap of a closing file. "And the on-call pediatrician is currently in surgery. We are at capacity." Sarah stared, her mind struggling to process the words. "No beds? At capacity? But he's so little, he needs help now." "But he can barely breathe," Sarah pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. "He's so hot. Can't someone just look at him, just for a minute?" She could feel the stares of the other waiting patients, a wave of humiliation washing over her. But Leo's labored breathing was the only thing that mattered. The air in the emergency room felt thick, suffocating. Before we continue with the story, be sure to let us know where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments. We love learning about our viewers. Now let's get back to the story. Nurse Davis's lips thinned into a hard line. "Ma'am, as I said, we cannot accommodate you. There are other hospitals. You'll have to try County General or St. Michael's Set." She gestured dismissively towards the exit. "I suggest you don't waste any more time here." The coldness in her voice was a physical blow. Sarah felt her knees tremble. "Other hospitals? How will I get there? I don't have a car. It took everything to get here." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes, hot and stinging. She looked down at Leo, his usually rosy cheeks now flushed a dangerous mottled red. His tiny eyelids fluttered weakly. "Please," Sarah choked out, one last desperate appeal. "Isn't there anything you can do? Any doctor who can just check his vitals?" She imagined screaming, demanding, but her throat closed up. The nurse was already turning back to her computer, the set of her shoulders a clear dismissal. A woman in a nearby chair, Heather White, looked away, fiddling with her purse, a flicker of discomfort in her eyes, but no move to intervene. Sarah felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of indifference. The clinical efficiency of the hospital suddenly seemed monstrous, a cold, unfeeling machine. Leo let out a tiny gasping cry, a sound that tore through Sarah. The finality in Nurse Davis's stance was absolute. There was no room for argument, no space for her fear or her baby's pain. "Security can escort you out if you continue to cause a disturbance," Nurse Davis said, her voice now laced with a steely threat, though she still didn't make eye contact. Sarah recoiled, as if struck. "A disturbance? My baby is dying, and I'm a disturbance?" The injustice of it burned, but fear for Leo quickly smothered the anger. She couldn't afford to be thrown out, to lose even these precious, awful seconds. She had to think, had to move, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. A sob escaped Sarah's lips, a raw sound of pure despair. She hugged Leo closer, trying to shield him from the hostility of the room, from the crushing weight of their rejection. His small body felt even hotter now, his breathing more shallow. I'm failing him. I can't protect him. The other faces in the waiting room blurred through her tears. Some looked pitying, some impatient. None offered help. The rhythmic beep of a distant monitor was a cruel counterpoint to Leo's ragged breaths. The stark white walls seemed to close in on her, suffocating her hope. She took a stumbling step backward, then another, her gaze locked on Nurse Davis's indifferent back. The nurse didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge her retreat in any way. It was as if Sarah and her critically ill child were already ghosts, unseen, unheard. The automatic doors hissed open behind her, a cold draft seeping in from the outside, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat radiating from Leo. What do I do? Where do I go? The questions screamed in her mind, but no answers came, only a rising tide of panic. With a final, shuddering breath, Sarah turned, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The bright lights of the emergency room gave way to the dim, gray evening outside. Each step away felt like a betrayal of her son. She could hear the murmur of voices from the waiting room, the click of Nurse Davis's keyboard fading behind her, the sounds of a place that was supposed to offer healing, now a symbol of cold rejection. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and desperation. The heavy glass doors of the emergency entrance began to slide shut behind her, the metallic swish a sound of absolute finality. Sarah stood on the cold pavement, the city air chilling her tear-streaked cheeks. Leo whimpered again, a weak, frail sound that was almost swallowed by the distant wail of a siren. She looked down at his flushed face, his eyes closed, his tiny chest struggling for each breath. The hospital doors clicked shut, sealing her out, and Leo's weak cry echoed across the empty triage room she had just been forced to leave. Sarah Miller sagged against the rough brick wall of the hospital exterior, the chill of it seeping through her thin coat. Tears streamed down her face, blurring the indifferent city lights. Leo's breaths were shallow, each one a tiny, painful flutter against her chest. He's getting worse. Oh God, he's fading. She fumbled with her worn scarf, trying to shield his face from the biting wind that whipped around the corner of the building. The bustling sounds of the city seemed a million miles away from the silent, desperate battle she was waging. Every instinct screamed at her to go back, to hammer on the doors, to demand help, but Nurse Davis's cold, dismissive face was seared into her memory. Humiliation and terror warred within her, leaving her paralyzed. A few feet away, near a staff entrance, a nurse on her break, Michelle Allen, was sipping coffee. She'd seen Sarah Miller hurry in earlier, cradling the obviously sick infant, and had noted the distress on the young woman's face. Now seeing her slumped outside, shoulders shaking with sobs, Michelle's brow furrowed with concern. She'd heard snippets of Nurse Davis's sharp tone from the triage desk, even through the wall. That poor girl. And that baby looked really unwell. Michelle hesitated for a moment, the hospital's strict policies on patient interaction outside of direct care flashing through her mind. But the image of the tiny, feverish infant was too compelling. Leo let out a pained sigh, a sound so fragile it barely disturbed the cold night air. Sarah's heart clenched. She pressed her cheek against his forehead. It was still alarmingly hot. I have to do something. I can't just stand here while he slips away. She fumbled for her cheap pay-as-you-go phone, her fingers clumsy with cold and panic. Who could she call? Her mother lived 3 states away, and had no money. She had no one else. The screen lit up, showing a low battery warning. Another wave of despair crashed over her. The world felt vast and uncaring, a place where a mother and her sick child could simply be cast aside. Nurse Michelle Allen made a decision. Setting her coffee cup down, with a decisive clink, she walked purposefully towards Sarah. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice kind. "Are you all right? Your baby, he looks very unwell." Sarah looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a desperate, hunted look that made Michelle's chest ache. They turned us away," Sarah stammered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "They said they're full. He's so sick, I don't know what to do." Fresh tears welled and spilled over, Michelle's gaze fell on Leo, noting the rapid, shallow breathing and the dusky tinge around his lips. This isn't just a fever, this baby is critical. I saw what happened, Michelle said, keeping her voice calm and reassuring. Let me see if there's anything I can do. I know someone who might be able to help. She was thinking of Mr. Harrison, the CEO of the entire hospital chain. He was known for occasional unannounced visits and had a reputation for being surprisingly hands-on and compassionate, despite his corporate position. It was a long shot, a massive breach of protocol to go over so many heads, but the sight of Leo spurred her on. This is wrong. This is not why I became a nurse. Stay right here, okay? Don't move. Michelle gave Sarah's arm a comforting squeeze and then turned, hurrying back towards the staff entrance, her mind racing. Inside, Mr. Richard Harrison, CEO of Horizon Health Systems, was concluding an impromptu late-night review of the Mercy General ER's recent performance metrics with the hospital administrator, Dr. Evans, in a small office just off the main ER floor. He prided himself on understanding the ground-level realities of his hospitals. As Michelle Allen hurried past the open office door, she made eye contact with a junior administrator she knew, gesturing urgently. The administrator, sensing the nurse's panic, quietly excused himself and stepped out. Michelle quickly, breathlessly explained what she had just witnessed: the young mother, the desperately ill infant, Nurse Davis's summary dismissal. The junior administrator, aghast, immediately understood the potential gravity and knew Mr. Harrison needed to hear this directly. He knocked discreetly and re-entered the office. Mr. Harrison, Dr. Evans, excuse the interruption, but something has just occurred that I believe you need to be aware of immediately. He recounted Michelle Allen's report concisely, his voice low but urgent. Mr. Harrison's initially patient expression sharpened. His eyes, usually warm, now glinting with sudden intensity. He listened without interruption, his jaw tightening as the story unfolded. The idea of a child, a baby, being turned away from one of his hospitals without proper assessment, especially in clear distress, struck a deeply discordant note with everything he believed his organization stood for. Turned away? A sick child. Unacceptable. Mr. Harrison stood abruptly, his imposing frame radiating a sudden, formidable energy. Where is this mother now? He demanded, his voice a low growl that promised swift action. Dr. Evans looked flustered, clearly blindsided. And show me the security footage of the triage desk from the last 15 minutes. The junior administrator nodded quickly. Nurse Allen said the mother is just outside the ER entrance, sir. I'll get the footage queued up in the security office immediately. Mr. Harrison was already moving towards the door, his mind a whirlwind of disbelief and anger. This is not how we operate. Not on my watch. He strode past a startled Dr. Evans, his focus entirely on the injustice that had just been reported. He followed the junior administrator to the small security room where the footage was quickly located. On the screen, Mr. Harrison watched the scene unfold. Sarah Miller's desperate arrival, her pleading face, Nurse Davis's dismissive gestures, the final, heartbreaking moment as Sarah was forced to retreat with her visibly ailing child. The raw emotion on Sarah's face, even through the grainy footage, was palpable. He saw the baby, limp in her arms. A surge of cold fury, mixed with a profound sense of responsibility, washed over him. This wasn't just a procedural failure. It was a human failure, happening under his leadership. That child needs immediate attention. My hospital denied it. The CEO's expression was grim, his mind already leaping ahead to solutions. The bureaucratic nightmare of trying to get the baby readmitted through the same ER that had just rejected him, especially with a potentially hostile staff member, was not the quickest path to care. Time was critical. He thought of the specialized pediatric ICU at their flagship downtown hospital, a facility equipped for the most critical cases. He turned to the stunned Dr. Evans, who had followed him into the security office. Get a pediatric crash cart to the main entrance now, and get me Nurse Allen. His voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. Then Mr. Harrison reached into his pocket, pulled out his personal cell phone, and his thumb moved decisively across the screen, dialing a number he knew by heart, the direct line to his private aviation pilot. The line began to ring as he held the phone to his ear, his gaze fixed on the image of Sarah and her baby on the monitor. "Marcus, I need the jet. Scramble it. Destination, Mercy General, then University Children's Hospital. 5 minutes. No, now." Mr. Harrison's voice was low and clipped into the phone, each word radiating urgency. He didn't wait for a reply beyond a quick affirmative, already turning back to a pale Dr. Evans and the now-arrived nurse Michelle Allen. "Nurse Allen, come with me. Dr. Evans, ensure that Cart is waiting and that Nurse Davis is occupied elsewhere. I'll deal with her later." His eyes, usually conveying thoughtful leadership, now held a steely resolve that left no room for argument. He moved with a speed that belied his executive position, striding rapidly towards the ER entrance, Nurse Allen practically jogging to keep pace. Every second counts. That baby doesn't have many to spare. The automatic doors slid open, and Mr. Harrison stepped out into the cold evening air. His sharp eyes scanned the area, and quickly found Sarah Miller, still huddled against the brick wall, her body trembling, Leo held tight against her. She looked up as he approached, her face a mask of exhaustion and despair, tear tracks glistening on her pale cheeks. For a fleeting moment, confusion flickered in her eyes, seeing this well-dressed, authoritative man and Nurse Allen rushing towards her. Who is this? More security? Are they going to make me leave the hospital grounds now? Her grip on Leo tightened protectively. The distant sound of sirens was now overlaid by a deeper, growing rumble, almost a vibration in the air itself. Mr. Harrison knelt beside Sarah, his expensive suit jacket brushing against the grimy pavement. His voice, when he spoke, was surprisingly gentle, cutting through Sarah's fear. "Sarah Miller?" he asked, his gaze soft as he looked at Leo, whose tiny face was pale and drawn. Nurse Allen was already reaching for Leo, her trained eyes assessing his condition with quiet efficiency. "My name is Richard Harrison. I'm the CEO of this hospital system." Sarah stared, speechless. "The CEO? Here? Why, I know what happened," he continued, his voice firm but kind. "And I am so profoundly sorry for how you were treated. It should never have happened." He saw the flicker of life in Leo, the almost imperceptible rise and fall of his chest. "Your son needs immediate specialist care, Sarah," Mr. Harrison stated, his focus absolute. "The kind our downtown children's hospital can provide. I've arranged for my private jet to fly you both there right now. It's landing at the helipad on the roof, as we speak." Sarah's jaw literally dropped. A private jet? For us? It sounded like something from a movie, utterly unreal after the brutal reality of the ER rejection. Nurse Allen gently took Leo from Sarah's unresisting arms, checking his pulse. "His pulse is thready, and his respirations are very shallow, Mr. Harrison. Oxygen saturation must be critical." Her voice was urgent but controlled. The rumble Sarah had vaguely noticed was now a distinct, powerful whirring sound from above. Mr. Harrison helped a stunned Sarah to her feet as a gurney, pushed by 2 paramedics who had been summoned by Dr. Evans, appeared from the ER entrance. "We're going to take the service elevator directly to the roof," he explained calmly, guiding a still reeling Sarah. "Nurse Allen will accompany you with Leo on the flight. The best pediatric team in the state will be waiting for him when you land." He saw a flicker of disbelief, then a dawning, desperate hope in Sarah's eyes. Can this be real? Is Leo going to be okay? The earlier despair was being pierced by a pinprick of light. She stumbled slightly, overwhelmed, and Mr. Harrison's hand was there to steady her arm. They moved quickly through the hospital's back corridors, a stark contrast to the cold indifference of the ER waiting room. Staff members they passed stared in muted astonishment at the sight of the CEO escorting a distressed young woman and a critically ill infant, with Nurse Allen carefully administering oxygen to Leo from a small portable tank retrieved from the crash cart. Mr. Harrison ignored them all, his focus solely on getting Sarah and Leo to the waiting aircraft. The thrum of the jet's engines was palpable now, vibrating through the building itself. The service elevator arrived with a ping, its doors sliding open to an empty car. Inside the elevator, the ascent was swift. Sarah clutched her hands together, her gaze fixed on Leo, whose small face was now partially covered by an oxygen mask Nurse Allen had expertly fitted. The nurse murmured reassuring words, her calm demeanor a balm to Sarah's frayed nerves. Harrison stood quietly, observing, his expression one of focused concern. As the elevator doors opened onto the rooftop helipad, the noise of the idling jet engines was immense, a powerful roar that seemed to fill the night sky. The sleek, white private jet stood waiting, its stairs already down, a beacon of impossible hope in the cold darkness. A flight medic met them at the jet's door, taking over Leo's immediate care from Nurse Allen with practiced ease, securing him into a specialized infant transport cot. Sarah, helped by Mr. Harrison, climbed the steps into the luxurious cabin, a world away from anything she had ever known. The interior was quiet, insulated from the engine noise, plush and reassuring. Nurse Allen settled in beside the cot, monitoring Leo closely. Mr. Harrison paused at the door, looking at Sarah. "You will be looked after," he said, his voice filled with a quiet conviction. "Focus on Leo. He's in the best hands now." Sarah could only nod, tears welling again, but this time they were tears of overwhelming gratitude and fragile hope. Mr. Harrison stepped back, nodding to the flight crew. He watched as the heavy door of the private jet swung shut, sealing Sarah and Leo inside with a solid, reassuring thud. He remained on the helipad as the jet's engines spooled up to a higher pitch, the wind from the rotors whipping at his coat. He saw Sarah's pale face for a moment through the small window, her eyes fixed on her son. He would deal with the systemic failures at Mercy General, with Nurse Davis, with the protocols that had allowed this to happen. But for now, his priority had been met. The powerful engines roared, and with a surge of controlled force, the jet lifted smoothly from the helipad, ascending into the dark night sky. Below, the lights of Mercy General receded. Inside the quiet cabin, insulated from the roar, Sarah Miller watched her son. As the aircraft banked, heading towards the promise of specialized care, Leo, nestled in his transport cot, let out a tiny, almost imperceptible sigh, a faint, hopeful sound against the hum of the engines as they climbed towards a chance he had almost been denied.